Emma ran out into the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. I had only an hour, a short hour, to get a proper lunch before I went back to the chaos of work. I tossed my bag by the door and, taking off my shoes, practically rushed into the kitchen. But immediately I stopped on the spot, my pulse pounding in my ears. At the kitchen table, slicing the sausage I'd set aside for lunch, sat Karen, my mother-in-law. "Karen?" My voice sounded strained even to myself. "Are you here for a visit?" My gaze shifted to the suitcase by the door, and a feeling of unease built in my stomach. "Is something wrong?" Karen smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's nothing, dear," she said calmly, making neat little incisions with her knife. "I just thought I'd stop by and spend some time with my family." My stomach sank. And how long is this going to last? I tried to keep my voice steady so I wouldn't give away my discomfort. Karen's gaze shifted to me, her expression unwavering. "Forever, I guess." Her words hung in the air like an accent. "Yes, Emma, you and I are going to live together now." I tried not to cringe, not to show the fear on my face. My thoughts were racing. Karen is moving in with us? That was something I'd been dreading for a long time. David worked the night shift. He slept during the day, so I had to deal with Karen's constant presence alone. And then there was the unsolicited advice she always gave, as if she were doing me the greatest favor in the world. I remembered how, when Tommy was only 3 months old, Karen had given what she thought was helpful advice. "Emma, you should think about going back to work," she said, smiling. "I could stay with Tommy." But when I explained that Tommy was still breastfeeding, she only shrugged dismissively. "So what? There's formula, isn't there?" That memory made my heart ache. I immediately turned to David, and he put me in my place. But now Karen was here, and it seemed she had come with a whole new set of plans. "Does David know about this?" I asked cautiously, feeling my anxiety coming to the surface. Karen puckered her lips, a determined expression on her face. "David is my son. He will support me," she said firmly. "And you, Emma, should know that we older people need your help, and we, in turn, help you young ones." Her tone softened as she added, "Oh, and if you happen to visit your parents, give them my regards. The homemade chicken they treated us to last New Year's Eve was absolutely wonderful." I blinked, startled by the sudden change in her tone. I cleared my throat, trying to regain control of myself. "Well, if that's the case," I said, circling the small apartment with my eyes. "You know we don't have a guest room. The only option is a balcony or a bathroom." Karen looked at me, confusion written all over her face. This was clearly not the answer she had expected from me. Me, Emma's usual "yes, Karen." "What do you mean by balcony?" she snapped back, setting the knife aside with a clatter. "I'm your mother-in-law, David's mother." I nodded, my lips stretching into a polite smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I know, Karen, but really there's no room here anymore. Maybe David can work something out. Either way, I'm late for work." I turned away, putting the pot of soup on the stove. My tone softened a little. "Maybe you'll stay for a while," I said, pouring the soup into a bowl. "But you have to realize that our space is limited. It's either the bathtub or the balcony." "The balcony is cold and uncomfortable," protested Karen. I shrugged, pretending to mull it over. "Then it's the bathtub. It's warm in there, and you can cover yourself with a towel." Karen's face flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief. But instead of backing away, she leaned forward, clenching her jaws. "I'll stay where I want to stay, honey. You can't order me around." I nodded again, as polite as ever. "Of course, you decide for yourself. But just so you know, David is coming off the night shift tomorrow. He'll need to sleep during the day." Karen fell silent, the determination on her face weakening. She knew all too well how David guarded his sleep. "Well, maybe the balcony isn't so bad," she said reluctantly. I smiled, my tone almost sincere. "All right then, I'm late as it is. I threw on my coat and, throwing one last cheerful glance, walked out of the apartment. As I left, Karen was still sitting there staring at her suitcase, her initial confidence visibly shaken. She hadn't expected things to turn out this way. And I felt a strange sense of victory I never imagined I could feel when it came to Karen. Stepping out into the frosty air, I felt a mixture of emotions bubbling up inside me. There was the satisfaction of finally being able to stand up for myself, but at the same time guilt crept in that reminded me that Karen was still David's mother. She was family, and as annoying as she was here because she wanted to be there for us. It seemed complicated, and I pushed the thought away, focusing on the immediate task of getting lunch and getting to work on time. Later, David came home from work, fatigue written all over his face. The first thing he saw was his mother sitting on the couch. "Mom," he asked, shifting his gaze from her face to the suitcase lying next to her. "Are you staying with us?" "Yes," Karen replied, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "But Emma said I can only sleep on the balcony." David sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "Well, if Emma said that, then there's a reason. You know how things work around here, Mom." "Do you really expect me to sleep on the balcony?" Karen raised her voice, her disappointment palpable. David looked at her with tired eyes, his shoulders slumped. "Mom, let's not argue with Emma," he said, his voice heavy with fatigue. "I need to sleep in the afternoon tomorrow. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Karen sighed heavily, resignation audible in her voice. She looked around the small apartment, lingering her gaze on the familiar photographs on the walls, small mementos of the life we were living, a life she hoped to take a more active part in. After dinner, she picked up the towel and thin mattress I'd left for her and reluctantly headed for the bathroom. "How did I end up in such a mess?" she muttered, frustration and determination mixed in her voice. She wasn't ready to give up yet. No, she wasn't. She had a dream of moving in with us and renting out her own apartment. What she planned to do with the extra money, she hadn't decided yet, but the idea of having it seemed like a good one. My laughter came from the kitchen, a distinct note of triumph. Karen leaned back on the uncomfortable mattress, clenching her jaws. "No, you're not going to win," she thought, narrowing her eyes. A new plan was already beginning to form in her head. Maybe she would sell her apartment and buy a bigger place for David and me to live. Then no one will kick me out, she pondered, though sleep continued to elude her. The night stretched on slowly. Karen stared up at the ceiling, the cold tiles of which pressed against her back. The bathroom was hardly restful, and every creak of the pipes made her shudder. She thought of her old apartment, a comfortable bed, a cozy space of her own. A longing pinched in her chest that she hadn't expected in any way. How had things gotten so messed up? All she wanted was to be closer to her son, to help, to be a part of his life. "But I've made it clear, haven't I?" Karen bit her lip, determination and resentment bubbling in her mind. She wasn't going to fail so easily. She raised David, worked herself to the bone to give him everything he needed. Surely she deserved better. Better than languishing on the bathroom floor. Morning came slowly, the first rays of dawn streaming through the window. David stirred in his room, the fatigue from the night shift still tugging at his limbs. He rubbed his face and took a deep breath, realizing that he would have to deal with the situation between his mother and his wife. The tension between them had reached a boiling point, and he was in the middle of it. Karen heard David's footsteps and sat up, her body aching from the uncomfortable night. She heard him moving about, getting ready for bed. When he appeared in the bathroom doorway, his face softened with sympathy and weariness. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked quietly. Karen raised her eyes to him, tired but still holding a spark of determination. "I'm fine, David. She hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted to be there for you." David knelt down beside her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "I know you did, Mom, but things are different now. Emma and I need our own personal space. It's not easy, but we're trying to make it work." Karen swallowed and nodded slowly. She knew he was right, but that didn't make it any easier. "Maybe I should just go home," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. David sighed, his heart aching for his mother. "Maybe. Or maybe we can think of something else. Let's talk about it when I wake up, okay?" Karen smiled forcedly, her eyes sparkling. "Okay, David." David squeezed her shoulder before standing up. "Get some rest, Mom. We'll figure this out." Karen watched him leave, and the door closed softly behind him. She lay down again, her mind still spinning with thoughts of what could be done, how things could still get better. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. There had to be some way out. For now, the apartment was quiet. No pets, no sounds except the quiet murmur of the city outside the window. Karen was alone with her thoughts and the ever-increasing feeling that things were not going the way she had envisioned. But she wasn't done fighting yet. A new plan had already begun to take shape, and this time she would make sure it worked in her favor.